Welcome to VM 101, an overview of the beef industry. This presentation was written by Dr. Megan Smith, a veterinary specialist at the Center for Food Security and Public Health at Iowa State University. This lecture is being recorded by Heather Cook from Kansas State University. The learning objectives pertaining to this presentation are as follows. Recognize how the beef cattle industry is divided and name key personnel in each division. Identify and name the life stages of production beef cattle in chronological order. Differentiate between management strategies at each stage of beef cattle production. Explain different types of houses used for beef cattle production. Explain different feeding practices for each life stage within the beef cattle industry. List major diet components used for beef cattle for each life stage. Identify common records generated at each step of the beef cattle production process. The beef industry in the United States is the largest in the world with regards to production. There were over 30 million beef cows in the national herd in 2010. According to the Economic Resource Service Division of the USDA, cattle were the top agriculture commodity in the U.S. that same year. The dispersion of cattle in the United States is mostly concentrated in the southwestern states, such as Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and Oklahoma. There are almost 8 million cattle housed in those 4 states alone. However, the majority of individual cattle operations are in the southeastern states, from Kentucky to Florida and Arkansas to North Carolina. These states are home to over 230,000 operations. The largest herds of beef cattle are generally found in the Great Plains regions of Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, and North and South Dakota, with an average of almost 100 cows per herd. Unfortunately, there has been a regression in the beef cattle industry as a whole due to severe droughts, increasing feed costs, and negative public perceptions. Being familiar with the flow of animals from one stage of the industry to the next provides a base of knowledge that will help with understanding of good management practices and nutrition of beef animals. The birth-to-plate production cycle of a beef animal takes place in 3 or 4 different phases of the industry. Note that this discussion does not include dairy-bred cattle that end up joining the beef production cycle. A typical beef animal starts its life on a cow-calf operation and remains there until weaning. From there, the animal may be sent to a backgrounder operation, where it will be fed a diet designed to increase its frame size and finishing ability. After weaning, or backgrounding if used, the animal will be sent to a feedlot facility, where it is fed a diet that encourages muscle growth and finishing, or the addition of intramuscular fat to increase the quality of the beef the animal yields. Finally, the animal is sent to a packing plant where it is harvested, or slaughtered, and transformed into various cuts of beef and other products desired by consumers. All phases of the beef industry need to work together in order to produce the end product of a healthy animal that yields high-quality beef and beef products for human consumption. The goal of a cow-calf operation is to maintain a herd of healthy cows that will produce healthy calves year after year. These cows will need to have good genetics in order to produce high-quality calves with characteristics desired by the industry. Cow-calf operations may require substantial amounts of land to house, grow, and maintain all of the animals on the operation. These operations may also require more labor during the calving season of the year. The time calves will spend at cow-calf operations can vary depending on the management scheme used, but most commonly calves will be at one facility from birth to weaning. Calves are typically weaned at 6 to 10 months of age and might weigh anywhere from 300 to 800 pounds. In some cases, producers will keep calves past weaning an extra 30 to 45 days to ensure calves are comfortably eating forages. Some operations send calves away the day they are born to another operation that will raise them. Some producers may choose to keep all their calves past weaning and raise them themselves. Others may send them to a backgrounder which will adapt them to the feedlot environment. Regardless of the production method, it is common that calves are separated into replacement heifers and breeding bulls to be retained within the herd, or heifers and castrated bulls, called steers, that will be sent to the feedlot. All producers should remember that good management of calves and cows will lead to fewer health problems in the long run. There are several personnel needed for the operation of a cow-calf farm. The ranch or farm owner will ultimately be in charge of the large decisions on the farm. Other personnel that may be needed on the farm will be a herd manager if the farm is too large for the owner to operate on his or her own. Even if more help is needed to operate the farm, other employees will be needed to make the work run smoothly. To maintain the health of the animals on the farm, a nutritionist and veterinarian will need to be on call for consultations and emergencies, respectively. An often utilized second step in the beef production process consists of calves being backgrounded, or prepared for their future in a feedlot. Calves may be sent to a specialized backgrounding facility, or cow-calf operators may keep their calves past weaning to acclimate them to the feedlot lifestyle. Common backgrounding techniques include familiarizing calves with water troughs, feed bunks, feed supplements, and sorting equipment so that the transition at the feedlot goes more smoothly. Other tasks during backgrounding include uniform vaccination of calves, which can add value to herds as well as minimize risks of disease upon arrival at the feedlot. Calves may spend anywhere from 60 to 300 days in this step, depending on the producer's needs. Calves will typically weigh 650 to 900 pounds when they leave the backgrounding facility. Once calves are done at the backgrounding facility, they might be sold at an auction to various producers or reassigned to a feedlot that has a contract with the backgrounding operation. Although this production stage can be helpful for calves' success at a feedlot, not all producers choose to utilize it. Many calves are sent straight to the feedlot after weaning. A farm owner and possibly manager will be found on a backgrounder facility to oversee the care of the animals and the other employees if they are present on site. On larger operations, more employees will be needed to provide timely, adequate care of the animals during their stay at the backgrounder facility. A nutritionist might be utilized to balance rations for the animals to achieve the desired growth rate. A veterinarian will be needed for medical emergencies and routine care. The goal of a feedlot in the beef cattle production cycle is to add muscle and fat to the cattle through an energy-dense diet, typically grain-based, for about 150 to 180 days until they weigh about 1,100 to 1,500 pounds and are ready for harvest. Feedlots are found in all states, but the majority of large feedlots are located in the Great Plains states of Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas, the north-central state of Iowa, and the southwestern states of Texas and Oklahoma. Feedlots come in various sizes, from small, family-owned operations that finish out only a few cattle annually to large corporate operations that finish out tens of thousands of cattle annually. As mentioned previously, many producers choose to skip the backgrounding stage and send their calves directly to a feedlot. Producers also have the option of keeping the calves and raising them to finishing weight independently. A feedlot can be as large or small as necessary for the amount of feedlot cattle in the area. The owner of a feedlot could do all the work themselves if the operation is small. Larger operations could either be run privately or by a corporation, depending on the operation. Larger feedlots will also likely have a manager that will oversee the work done by other employees if they are present on the farm. Some feedlots may be large enough to need pen riders that can check cattle and fences at least once daily. Other employees that may be needed on the feedlot include general laborers and feed mill operators. They will be needed to get daily tasks done for the operation of the feedlot. The rations fed at a feedlot are very important and will need to be established by a nutritionist for optimum weight gain before harvest. As with all animal operations, a veterinarian needs to be on call for all animal medical needs. The final phase of the beef cattle production cycle is harvesting and packing. This is where the animal is harvested, then cut and processed into various products desired by consumers. As cattle reach the desired finishing weight, feedlots will compose a list of animals that will fall within the set weight range. Cattle are then sent typically via truck and trailer to packing plants. Feedlots and producers may have various contracts with one or more packing plants to send their cattle where they are often marketed and priced based on a grid of various characteristics such as quality grade and carcass yield. As with feedlots, packing plants can be either privately or corporately owned. Packing managers will be needed to supervise operations at the plant. Line employees are needed for the smooth operation of the harvesting and packing line for meat processing. Before meat can be processed on the line, the animals have to be hauled there through private or corporate haulers that may be contracted with the packing plant. Buyers will also be needed in the packing plant cycle for the meat to be sold once it has been harvested and packed. Veterinarians and meat inspectors will be necessary to evaluate the health of the animal on hoof and on hook, respectively. In the beef cattle industry, records are very important and should be kept for many reasons. Records to keep include calving data, veterinary care, deliveries, and employee information. When calving season is in full swing, some important information to record includes calf weight, gender, parental identification, and any problems during calving. Any veterinary care performed needs to be recorded for reference at a later time. All vaccinations and medications given to animals need to be recorded for the proper withdrawal periods. All deliveries need to be recorded, such as feed deliveries, forage deliveries, and departing or arriving animals. Commodity and animal movement information that should be recorded include the date delivered, destination, and animal identification, if applicable. When animals are sent to another location for another life stage of the cycle, records of when and where they are going need to be kept. Farms may differ on their forms of recording keeping, such as electronic or written records or a whiteboard in the barn. Record keeping is essential for disease traceability in the event of a major disease outbreak within the industry. For any employees of an operation, their contact information should be kept in case of any emergency. Now that we have discussed the main phases of production found within the beef industry, we will move on to the basics of cattle management and nutrition within those phases. Cows and heifers that are bred need to receive adequate nutrition to ensure they are able to produce a healthy calf yearly to make profits for the producer. Females on an operation are often grouped by age: yearling heifers, first calf heifers, and mature cows. Sometimes there is also a group of second calf heifers, as those females are not quite mature. These groups have different nutritional requirements because some are still growing, some are growing while developing a fetus, and others are trying to maintain body condition while growing a fetus. During the cycle of breeding and pregnancy, there is also a period of time where females are also nursing a calf while trying to grow and or maintain herself. We ask a lot of our cows, so it is important to feed them accordingly so they can accomplish everything we're asking them to. Beef heifers typically reach puberty around 370 to 380 days of age, depending on weight and breed characteristics. Once heifers begin cycling, they will cycle every 17 to 24 days. This is the same in mature cows. Synchronization techniques may be used to make all females in a group reach estrus at the same time in order to make breeding easier. The goal for many operations is to have a 60-day calving window. This makes synchronization and timed breeding very beneficial. Once females are bred, they are often pregnancy checked to ensure conception. Cows will typically gestate for about 9 months, and a successful, easy delivery depends greatly on the body condition of the cow and birth weight of the calf. Bulls used for breeding have unique needs that need to be looked after carefully by producers. Young bulls typically reach puberty between 9 and 11 months of age. They can be ready to breed at 15 to 17 months of age depending on their breed and genetics. Bulls might be kept on-site for natural breeding, or they may be off-site and collected for artificial insemination, AI, purposes. Bulls can be dangerous no matter where they are housed. Caution should always be used when handling them. Bulls used for AI purposes are typically collected 2 to 3 times per week. Although many bull stud farms have a lot of business and inseminate many cows and heifers, a good number of beef females are bred through naturally mating by herd bulls. Many producers will have breeding soundness examinations performed on bulls. This will help predict the bull's future success as a sire. Some producers will also keep detailed records of offspring in order to have expected progeny differences, EPDs, calculated on individual bulls. EPDs are numbers that can project information about the offspring from these bulls. Natural service bulls are usually kept until they are about 6 years of age. It is around this age when reproductive ability decreases. AI bulls can be kept much longer and can service many more cows in a year because the semen collected is extended and proportioned into individual straws. Proper calf management and care are important for successfully raising beef calves. Careful management during calving season will produce healthy, productive calves that yield high-quality beef products. Some calving management techniques that are beneficial for calving success include estrus synchronization, separate calving facilities for cows and heifers away from where the rest of the herd is housed, and observation of birth without unnecessary interference. Once calves are born, they should be weighed as close to birth as possible. Records should be kept on all calves regarding birth date, birth weight, gender, and tag number. Most producers have their own style and system of ear tagging calves in a way that the tag will tell the background information of the animal as well as match it up with its mother. Other calf processing events that occur several weeks after birth include castration, which should be done for bull calves not being kept for breeding, as well as dehorning, vaccinations, and deworming. The various stages of beef cattle production will have different types of housing that will provide optimal welfare for the animals. A cow-calf operation will likely have pasture ground that will house the cow-calf pairs for calving and separate pastures for heifers and cows ready to calve. Then calves may be sent to a backgrounding facility where they are put into groups in facilities as those in a feedlot. These might consist of pens, chute systems, and feed bunks to get used to. Once they are moved to a feedlot, they will be housed in pens similar to a backgrounding facility with grouped pens, automatic waterers, and feed bunks. After that, animals are sent to a harvesting facility where they are held in pens until they are harvested. Many cow-calf operations will raise cows and calves on pasture for a large portion of the year. The region of the United States within which the herd is located will determine the amount of time that the cows and calves will spend on pasture. Southern states will usually have pasture vegetation all year round and will be able to keep cattle out for the duration of the calving and growing season. Northern states with a varying climate will only have pasture accessibility during the warm growing months. In those northern states, producers will provide supplemental hay and/or silage during colder months. Other common grazing materials in these states will be corn and soybean stover after the harvest has been completed in the fall. No matter where a herd resides, it is important to make sure cows are getting enough protein in their diet. Supplements should be added if necessary. Protein is important in the diet during all life stages, but especially for late gestation and early lactation phases in pregnant and newly fresh cows. Other supplements that may be given to cows and calves include grains, minerals, and salt. When calves are born, they will primarily consume milk from their mother, but will start to nibble on grass and other feedstuffs as they grow. The quality of feed the cow consumes will directly determine the quality of milk she produces for her calf. The feed products used, as well as the ultimate goal of feeding feedlot cattle, are very different from those on a cow-calf operation. The goal of feeding feedlot cattle is to add muscle mass and fat in a relatively short amount of time so they can be harvested for human consumption. A cow-calf operation feeds a high-fiber diet, whereas a feedlot diet tends to be more energy-dense in order to increase muscle mass and intermuscular fat or marbling. Regardless of production stage, the nutrients needed by all cattle are the same. It is the amounts required and the sources of the nutrients that will vary. Energy is provided to feedlot animals in the form of high-fat products, such as dried distiller grains, DDGs, and other ethanol co-products. Common sources of fiber include hay, silage, and hayage. Protein sources include cottonseed meal, DDGs, ethanol co-products, gluten feeds, and soybean meal. Small amounts of vitamins and minerals are typically provided. Certain additives may be added to feed for various reasons, whether they are medical or growth additives. Some commonly used feed additives include antibiotics, ionophores, partitioning agents, and melangesterol acetate, MGA. Antibiotics, ionophores, and partitioning agents are used to increase feed efficiency and/or prevent disease. MGA is fed to heifers to inhibit estrus from occurring, which in turn helps feed efficiency of the heifers. The delivery of feed to animals in a feedlot is relatively similar throughout the country, but may depend on the operation's equipment, production phase, and type of feedstuff being fed. Typically, there is a long feed bunk along one side of the lot next to an alleyway, so that feed trucks can drive along the bunk and deliver the proper amount of feed after it has been mixed on site. With this method, the trucks do not have to go into each individual pen. This helps reduce disease transmission by not allowing the transfer of manure from one pen to another. Animals are typically fed 1 to 3 times per day, depending on the feeding schedule employed at the operation. Proper management of feed bunks in a feedlot is very important to the health of the cattle eating from them. These bunks can be made from various materials such as concrete, plastic, steel, wood, or a combination thereof. Feed bunks should be closely inspected daily to record intake volumes in order to calculate billing and inventory of feedstuffs. Feed bunk inspections will also help determine if an illness is striking the lot. Facility employees, such as pen riders and lot managers, are the ones who daily care for the animals and will be the first to notice a reduction in feed intake that may be due to a health concern. Monitoring feed bunks can be done various ways, from using paper records to computer systems to record the data into tables. Management of feed bunks should not be overlooked, since feed is the second highest expense for producers and should not be an extra expense due to poor management. Feed storage varies greatly between feedlots. Some storage options include bays, above ground or underground pits, bins, and covered or uncovered piles. Bays can hold many tons of feed that is easily scooped out with large equipment. They are commonly used for DDGs and gluten feeds. Bays are three-sided enclosures that may be covered or uncovered. They serve as a place for feed to be dumped when it is delivered or processed. Above ground and underground pits are used to store silage and hayage, which is often covered with plastic and tires. Bins are typically used for storing concentrate feeds that can easily flow out of the bin using gravity. These bins are made from metal, cement, or plastic. Piles are commonly used to store hay, straw, or cornstalk bales. Piles may or may not be covered, depending on the producer's preference. The size of a feedlot indicates the amount of storage that might be available on the operation. Smaller operations may have more room for feed storage, whereas larger operations may not have enough room to store the feed necessary for all of the cattle that they house. However, large feedlots may have their own feed mill on site, where feed is mixed daily and as needed for feeding the cattle. Smaller operations often have feed delivered on a regular basis from feed mills. All living things need water for survival. Cattle are no exception. Pastured cattle, as well as feedlot cattle, should have access to clean, fresh water at all times. Cattle can drink about 6 to 19 gallons of water per day, depending on ambient temperature, their phase of reproduction, and diet. Water can come from many sources and should be monitored for cleanliness and availability. Natural water sources include streams, ponds, and rivers. Man-made sources include water tanks and wells. Water tanks in feedlots, pens, and pastures should be checked daily to make sure they are working properly and clear of debris. All water sources should be checked more frequently in extreme weather conditions and should be managed accordingly. This course was made possible by funding in part by the Food and Drug Administration through a grant to Iowa State University and Kansas State University. Thank you.